What is up YouTube, it's Sciz1 here, and today we're taking a look at and testing out the On The Run Soultip Graffiti Mop in the .007 size. As always, I'm going to give you all the important info that you're going to want to know about these OTR Soultip Graffiti Mops, and then we'll be heading over to our testing area to do a tagging test and see how these write on some different surfaces. Of course, we're going to include a very slippery surface to test out the dripability, as I like to call it, of these mops, and a bit of a rougher surface as well. If you do like what you see with the OTR Soultip here, I have links in the description to the best deals that I could find on the OTR Soultip .007 and the OTR paint refills for them too, where you can pick these up for yourself. I'll even try to put the same colors down there too. And just a quick pro tip with Sciz, it's always cheaper to buy one mop and a paint refill instead of a bunch of pre-filled mops. That's what I recommend you buy anyway. Of course, to test out here we have just two, but that's for, color difference that we're going to test out opacity with and things like that. But trust me, one OTR paint refill of 120 milliliters. I was wrong, the paint's actually 210 milliliters is enough to refill one of these bad boys 12 times, since they are just 10 milliliters, as you can see on screen. So the OTR Soultip is a squeezable body graffiti mop with a 6mm mohair diamond fiber nib, as they call it. The control over flow that you get with this Soultip through the squeezability is something we're really going to pay a lot of attention to in our surface tagging test. The mop body itself should be fairly high quality, and it is prepared in Germany. I know I've got lots of German viewers on the channel. Shout out to the German graffiti scene. The mop comes pre-filled with an alcohol-based paint and comes in a huge range of 22 different colors, including some interesting ones like this neon pink here. Stainless dirty chrome is a color they also have. That's a cool one. And a favorite of mine, petrol. And that is another thing we'll be paying close attention to in our surface tagging test: the vibrancy, true color, and opacity of the actual paint and paint formula. This nice pocket-sized mop will only put you out about $5.50, that's USD. After you have the mop itself, again, you can get paint refills with 12 times more paint than the mop has for just about 2.5 times the price. Just a pro tip with Sciz there to help you guys save a bit of dinero. But it is definitely time to head over to our surface testing area and see the OTR Soultip in action, tagging some subscribers' names who wanted some hit-offs. Let's get to it. Okay, so welcome to the testing area here. This is where all the magic happens, and this is where we actually see what products stand up to our tests and see which ones don't. So any of the graffiti mops here, and a lot of graffiti mops in general, are very, very similar. So what we're really interested in looking at during this test here is really the squeezability and the controllability of these mops, as well as testing the structural integrity of these mohair nibs on the mops. And I know you can basically fill these mops with pretty much whatever you want. That's a nice function about any kind of graffiti mop, but since they do come pre-filled with the OTR Soultip paint, we are actually going to pay a little bit of attention to the opacity and the vibrancy of the paint formula, since these are the pre-filled mops that we can get here. To test out, we're going to do a couple things. First, I have this nice, it's probably like a high-density polyethylene sort of plastic, nice, slippery, smooth surface that we're going to test these on, see what we can do on really one of the funnest surfaces to actually write on. I also have a metal surface to test on, another super smooth, fun surface. And then after that, to test the nib's durability just a little bit, what we're going to do is I have this painted surface. It's got a few rough parts in the surface that might cause the nib a little bit of trouble if we're dealing with a not so great nib, but given that this is an OTR brand mop, the Soultip, I'm gonna assume that it'll take more than just a little bit of roughness to wear these nibs out. So let's get to it. And of course, the way we test these out, we're gonna write some subscribers' names who asked for hit-offs, because that's what we like to do. We like to thank the community. Toyer wanted to hit off, let's get him up here. As you can see, very, very controllable. You can get as many drips on here as you want. I love the size of these markers. Very nice in pocket size. Very nice to, just write with in general. Let's also give a shout out to Shoke. As you can see, this is a gorgeous, gorgeous formula here. The paint drips in all the right spots. Obviously, I'm not doing it very much justice here with these, but yeah, really, really amazing formula. We're gonna do something a little bit funky here. Shout out to Guns here. Now, really, this is me not squeezing particularly hard on these whatsoever, and that is one of the signs that you have a great controllable kind of mop here. So now it's a metal surface. Obviously, this isn't going to be something that tests the durability of these mops out, but it is a really fun surface, and realistically, it's one of the main surfaces that you're going to be using either of these mops on. So let's say hi to Solo11. He left a great comment on one of my videos. Shout out to him over in Saudi Arabia. Yeah, and this is where you can really, really see the nice, almost 3D a little bit effect of this paint formula. It's really, really nice to use on this specific surface. Also, Deb wanted to hit off. Let's give Deb a hit off. Shout out to Deborah. Again, you have the controllability with this mop if you know what you're doing a little bit to get drips sort of where you want them. I really feel like the size of these mops, in particular, the 10 milliliter size of the OTR 0.007 is a really controllable, nice thing to write with. Let's get one more tag in down here for Rebel. So you can tell I'm not really pressing too particularly hard on this whatsoever. Really nicely opaque, no streaking, nothing like that. So really the vibrancy and the opacity of this formula holds up quite nicely. Okay, so I can finally actually stand up now and do a couple tags here. It's honestly hard on the knees crouching down like that. Makes you feel like you're not putting down anything too nice. But this surface is a little bit rough. It's black, so really this tests the vibrancy quite nicely, especially with these very bright colors, high value colors. So I just want to put down a couple tags, test the nib's durability a little bit. It's been fine so far. I'll give you a good look there at it, and I hope that continues. Another thing I want to point out right now is just that if you look, I've put down a few tags with this already, and this is a very clean marker. Some mops are just like dripping, especially with the bigger nib sizes. One thing Green Rangers always says over at Art Primo is never go tagging in your Crispies. Of course, he's saying don't wear your crispy fresh clothing there, but this is almost the type of thing where you can just throw it in a jeans pocket and you don't have to be making sure you're not in your Crispies. Try a couple things over here on the extra rough part. Obviously over here, not something you would ever really use this for, like filling in a 3D blob or something like that, but I did want to use that just to sort of give myself an excuse to scratch the nib across the surface and see how it holds up. It absorbed a bit of the paint on the surface, but other than that, the nib is holding up beautifully. It's a very tough nib. They do emphasize that on the labeling and the branding of these, but it really is the truth. These are tough, good nibs. You can probably get quite a few refills out of this before you actually have to change the nib. Of course, another thing I do want to mention here, generally you're not really getting too many streaks even on a dark surface here. This is a fairly opaque formula, it has to be said. So just for a final measure here, just gonna put down a couple things with the pink, just because I think the pink's a little bit of a lighter color on a darker surface. We're gonna really make sure the opacity is good here. Try and do a nice on the run here. be honest here with the pink, the opacity isn't holding up quite as nicely. You can see sort of streaky there. I was putting plenty of pressure on it, enough pressure to even, you know, get some drips here and there. But yeah, a little bit disappointing to see a little bit of streakiness with a lighter color like this. This is supposed to be like a neon pink. It doesn't really look that neon-y to me. It just sort of looks like a weak pink, like almost a piggy pink or something like that. But there's undeniably quite a bit of streaking here, which you can tell right away by the green. It was just, the green performed much better. I'll give you a few of my thoughts here, specifically on number one, the actual physical mop, and number two, the paint formula, just because again, it does come pre-filled with this kind of paint. You do want to know what the Soultip paint is like. So number one, the mop itself, I have to say, I actually have zero problems with it. There's really nothing negative I can say about this kind of mop. It's a very simplistic kind of mop, of course, but at the same time, it really is an art nailing the squeezability, getting it so it's exactly the type of squeezability you want, so you can have a nice controllable flow on a variety of different surfaces, really. And of course, the nib itself, I'll give you a look on screen at the nibs so you can see sort of how they held up after like 10-20 tags, something like that. This isn't the roughest surface, but it's a lot rougher than a lot of things most people are writing on. One thing I do want to make sure everyone understands is that this is a 10 milliliter mop. You can see how small it is in my hand. It's very nice and pocket sized. I love the small mops, but it's sort of hard to tell sometimes when you're buying mops how big they are, and this is certainly not very big. It's nice pocket size, good for carrying. Not great if you're gonna be using it for 3 hours straight. You're gonna be refilling it quite a bit. That being said, it is refillable. This is where I come to the refill part, the paint itself. I would not really use OTR Soultip paint to refill this. I've always used other brands just as a personal preference, and I've used other brands for years. Just the OTR paint to me has never been quite as good as some of the other brands on the market. For me, I would use another kind of paint formula other than this. So not a personal preference. There's nothing super wrong with it. OTR is of course a high quality brand, but when all's said and done, I think you guys might prefer a different kind of brand of paint. Maybe you won't, I don't know. Test it out for yourself and see. That's what this is all about. That's half the fun of Graff. But in any case, I do have reviews of some other mops on the market. If you want to check those out, those will be on screen. That cicada is really loud. Those will be on screen now in any case. And until my next one, peace.